Today's episode contains content that might raise eyebrows. That's why it's playing right now during the FCC's Safe Harbor hours. If you keep listening, you've been warned. If you're easily shocked, you might want to skip this episode. As always, KWDC content promotes learning and community. You're listening to 93.5 KWDC Stockton. I am Theodore Chin with the new podcast titled Dissemination of Misinformation. This production is brought together by students and staff enrolled in the broadcasting courses in the Digital Media Department at San Joaquin Delta College. Thank you for supporting college radio. Let's get on with the show. Have you ever wondered or dared to look at the media and information that you're being presented with and wanted to know why? I'm Theodore Chin, and these are the exact questions and rabbit holes I'm exploring with the Dissemination of Misinformation podcast. Today's episode deals with the topics of media literacy and the importance of journalism in the Stockton community. I'll be interviewing San Joaquin Delta College's very own collegiate co-editor-in-chiefs, Jalissa King and Andrea Rivera, and get down as to why journalism is needed in this city. So stay tuned, listen up, and follow along for the ride. So here today, I am welcomed with our very own San Joaquin Delta College's collegiate editor-in-chiefs, Jalissa King and Andrea Rivera. Introduce yourself and tell me more about what it is you do as a student-run media newspaper.
Hi, I'm Jalissa King, and I am the co-editor-in-chief with Andrea Rivera. What we do for the Collegian, we basically make sure that news production is in order. We have all the stories in for the newspaper. We also oversee all the other editors of the paper as well. But I started originally as the entertainment editor for the newspaper and then worked my way up for the past 3 semesters. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Andrea Rivera. I am the co-editor-in-chief to Jalissa King. I as well started as the sports editor for the paper probably about 4 semesters ago. We basically make the executive decisions in the newsroom. So if there's a problem or if there is something that nobody is agreeing on, or if there's a certain picture we want on the front cover, we make those decisions. We go in and edit stories after they've been looked over. We do pretty much everything you can imagine, from like first base to second base is my analogy for you. We make the home run basically. By the end of production, we've looked at every single part of the paper and approved everything that's gone on, or told somebody like, hey, no, we're gonna change this. Mm-hmm. That's basically what we do.
And going into my next question, just to get to know you guys a little more, what is it that inspired you guys to pursue journalism?
I think for me, I've always loved writing as a kid, and I'm not gonna lie. When I was a teenager, I was having a moment where I was like, am I going to be a good journalist? I don't know. So my mindset kind of flipped. But coming back into college, I started taking Tara's class in the collegian, and I think that really opened my eyes more to, oh, this is something I want to do. I am passionate about. Sometimes it is a challenge, especially when you are doing certain stories. But I think those challenges are good because you can overcome them. And when you do have that same challenge in a different perspective or story, you know what to do in that moment or how to flip it. So, but yeah, it's been a great experience so far. I've learned so much. I've met so many people. So
my come up's a little different. I actually came to school wanting to be a nurse. I did always have the love for writing and taking photographs, but I didn't think that I could make it. I wasn't that confident yet. And then I failed a human anatomy course and was like, oh, I do not love learning about people's bodies and don't really want to deal with people's problems like that. And I was also just very nosy. So I was like, I always wanted to be the one that like, okay, so what's the truth about this? Like, are you telling me everything? Or is there something more? Like, where can I find all this information? And then kind of the same thing as Jalissa, I took an MCOM 1 course with Tara. And I had done journalism work in high school, And I was just like, oh, that's never going to work out. They don't even make that much money, so it's not even worth it. And then as soon as I started taking her course, everything started clicking so easily. I was getting good grades. I was understanding the concepts. Everything just flowed so much easier. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm meant to do. Like, I'm supposed to be writing. Like, this is my path. And so then I just enrolled on the newspaper. And since then, I've just been there, and I knew exactly that's where I needed to be. And then from there, I've flourished basically ever since taking her class, and just the connections that I was able to get from her. Now I'm at Sac State, and I'm going to be graduated in a year. And like, I'm so excited to like start telling all the truth and be an investigative reporter.
That's actually just wonderful. I have no other words to like to say to that, but you know, kudos to your journey.
Thank you.
I feel like that's like going into like personally, like with me, I am not anything of like a journalist or like anything of that sort, but like my major is theater, and I'm an actor, and so it's just like, but I always have a lot of creative like outlooks and endeavors that I want to approach, and so I feel like there's a specific for me, like with going into like podcasting and the world of just like, you know, interviewing and having like dissecting media itself and information. There's a level of like carefulness that I have, and there's a reverence that I have to people that do investigative journalism, because like for me, like my influences are like NPR and like a lot of podcasters, because I love the way that they, you know, they dive into it is in its own sense of like investigative journalism, but in audio form. So what are some major accomplishments that you guys have achieved on the line of duty in the world of investigative journalism and the collegiate?
Ooh, it's a loaded question.
There's a lot of them.
Oh,
We
gosh.
hate bragging, basically.
No, you know, she is an award-winning journalist. I am
She
too,
is
in a different way. I admire Andrea so much because she has so much of this like she can change the room like in such a good way. Like she can intimidate people, but I love that about her because I have that issue where I'm so like, ah.
I don't know what she's talking
But
about.
no. But she just has this very powerful like ambiance when she walks into the room. So I would love to be more in her shoes. I'm learning as I'm going, but I think a major accomplishment of being in this course, especially sitting, working with Andrea as well. I think with the newspaper, my creativity has like when designing the newspaper, I hated it the first time I did. I was like, this is not for me. I cannot. But I think as every time we had a newspaper production, it started to get more fun. And even though I do get anxiety really bad, I actually strive on stress, which is really weird. I work way better. If I'm on a timeline, I'm like, okay, I can do it. But I think because I did get an award for is it an infographic for one of the newspapers, and that was really fun. That was cool. But yeah, I did do a big story last semester, and it really took a lot out of me. It was a learning experience, but I will say I learned so much about the college. And I was talking about Measure K and the school bond that Delta was going for this year. And but yeah, I learned a lot from that, and I did get an award for that. So that was cool. That was also awesome too. So yeah.
Kudos to you.
Thank you.
I'll add to Jalissa's and say most of her awards, because she has multiple, have gone for her creativity.
She has multiple too.
She's the most creative person that I know. I think we work so well together because she's the creative one. And then as she said, like, I'm the one that's going to be like, hey, like, nah, like, we need to we need to do this, and I'll be the powerful one, I guess.
Logistical.
Yeah,
would you
I'm the
say?
more
Yeah.
logistical
She's
one.
dominant. She's a queen. She is powerful. She's a
I
leader.
don't think that I am, but that's they've all said that they all fear me at some point, and I'm like, I don't know where that comes from, but okay. But when it comes to awards, I guess that I've just gotten quite a couple. So I hate saying these accomplishments because I try to say them as humbly as possible. I don't boast about anything that I've gotten. I really don't. Like, it's a problem I have. I actually did a piece like Jalissa. I feel like we all do at some point when we're working on the paper, do some big piece that really showcases what we've learned about being a journalist and becoming a journalist. So I actually did a piece probably 2 semesters ago called the 67% rule, and it was a labor law broken by Delta College, and that one really set me on the path to becoming an investigative journalist and my love for being an investigative journalist. And from there, I've won multiple awards for that. I've won multiple awards for my photography skills. As humbly as I can say, I've won multiple things. My biggest accomplishment for myself that's really showed me that, like, I can do this has been winning a scholarship recently for $5,000. That one was very difficult. I had to basically write about my accomplishments and tell them everything that I'm doing or plan to do in the area, just Northern California itself. And that one definitely told me, like, okay, like, I'm doing this, I can do this. And so, yeah, that's what I've had so far. I plan to have more.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah.
All right. So why may local and credible news outlets be the most important thing in our current day and society?
Ooh.
I feel like that's a good lead into media literacy.
That is.
Having a credible news source is how the world turns, in my opinion. And everyone can disagree or agree with me, but in my opinion, having a credible news source such as CNN is what makes the world turn. How would you know that something important is going on? How would we have known that COVID was a thing if they hadn't broken a story? How would we know that there were helicopters falling out of the sky recently? How would we know any of this information or be given, the opportunity to come to a conclusion ourselves without having a credible news source or having somebody around us that's knowledgeable to tell us this information? Not just news sources, but now podcasts, TikTok, Instagram, X, all of these things, without being able to fact check them or know the process of fact checking, then we're all just gossiping. That's when you have your TMZs, your Peoples, your tabloids that, are saying crazy things.
And I think also, I don't know everyone's experience when they are doing a big story. Everyone has a different experience. But I think as for journalists, especially, wanting to tell the truth and telling the actual story, the whole big picture, you have to applaud those people because that's kind of hard. And you have to go out there and talk to certain people that don't want to talk, and getting them to open up and tell the whole story. That's hard. And then you have these other people that want the story out, but in their own narrative. And I think that's more of like a power thing for them. Just my opinion. But I think people get kind of, what's the word, or what's the saying, lost in the sauce, so to speak. They just see this as, popularity. I can build off this, instead of being like, well, what's the real story here? How can we get this out there? How can we inform people that this is going on? And I think that's really important. And hopefully people don't get lost in the sauce, so to speak.
Yeah. To add to that, it really is just about, you can tell when something's credible, or you can tell when someone's actually put the work in. When you come away from a piece or come away from information not having a question, or if you do have a question, it can easily be answered, or there's going to be a follow-up. story, in which case they'll tell you like we'll keep on this, we'll all of that kind of thing. So that's definitely in our opinions. These are strictly our opinions. Not everyone's going to agree.
Yeah.
But when it comes to credible sourcing, especially in the news outlet.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for saying that. And I think that goes into a perfect segue to our 2-minute break. So stay tuned. Don't leave just yet.
Well, Jason, I've got to tell you, you're pretty much everything this company is looking for in an entry-level candidate.
Great.
Your resume isn't quite what we're used to, but you've got a fantastic work ethic.
Thank you.
And I'm impressed by how you carry yourself.
So, should we talk about the job?
What? The job? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I have no way of recruiting or even meeting you. This interview didn't happen.
It may sound ridiculous, and that's because it kind of is. There's a huge pool of talent your company is missing out on. Meet the grads of life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Man, we really could have used him.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Were you born from 1945 to 1965? People born during these years are 5 times more likely to have hepatitis C, but most people don't know they are infected. So even if you try to eat right, exercise, and take care of yourself, you can still have hepatitis C, a serious liver disease that often has no symptoms. In fact, people can live with hepatitis C for decades without feeling or looking sick. But over time, hepatitis C can cause serious health problems, including liver damage, liver failure, or even liver cancer. Getting tested is the only way to know if you're infected with hepatitis C. That's why the CDC recommends everyone born from 1945 to 1965 get a blood test for hepatitis C. Treatments are available that can cure this disease. So talk to your doctor about getting tested. It could save your life. A message from the CDC.
All right. Now moving on to our main topic of discussion that I know folks have been dying to hear about. Media literacy and Fierce Mustang Media's collaborative effort, Media Decoded. What is Media Decoded, and what was that process like from conception?
Ooh, I'm going to be honest. Working on it in the beginning, when Tara was pitching it with Media Decoded and Media Literacy, I was like, ooh, yeah, I like this. This is cool. And then she's like, all right, well, y'all got to put this together. I was so lost. I was looking up stuff. I'm like, what is this? Wait, what? There's a whole thing on it? Oh my God. But I did take her MCOM 1 class, and I feel like we do talk about that, media literacy, and just how we consume media as well. But the concept of it is, just knowing what you are taking in and making sure that it's accurate and that it is the real story. I think even for me nowadays, sometimes when I look at things, I'm like, wait, is this really happening? And then I gotta fact check myself, and I'm like, oh, well, Google says it's not. They don't say that on NPR, or oh no, that's not being talked about on news outlets. So, but yeah, I think it's important for people to actually look into what they're consuming. And social media, I feel like, is a really big, I mean, it has a huge audience, and people are so easily gravitate to social media, whether that's Facebook, X, especially X, Instagram, TikTok sometimes, well, TikTok altogether, YouTube. I think that people can fall victim easily to consuming things that are more opinion-based or just conspiracy theories and such. So, but yeah, I think it's very important to spread the word.
From conception, wow, that was a long time ago. It feels like it was just last semester, but it feels like such a long time
How
ago.
long was that process?
It's
been quick. I can tell you that it's been quick yet long, if that makes sense. It felt like as soon as Tara pitched the idea, I'm going to be honest with you. I was super like, oh, I don't know if I could handle this. Like, this feels way too important. This feels out of my skill set. I have no idea what we're doing.
Really?
And then Jill was like, no, Andrea, we have to do this. And I was like, okay, if you tell me. And so it was honestly Jalissa like being like, okay, we have to do this.
Was it?
Because it just felt so important, and I didn't know how to tell other people about it. This was the first time where I've never been able to be like, well, I know exactly what this, and this is. No, I've had to put obviously a lot of work, and I always put a lot of work into everything I do, but I had to do so much research into what it was and how to describe it in so many formats to so many different people, because we're not just describing this to, let's say, you and I. We're not just talking about it between us and our ages. No, we're talking about this to all ages, and that was our point. We wanted to get this from kindergarten to adult learners. We wanted everybody to be aware of something. And how would we put that on paper? How would we put that on slides? How would we put that on a booklet? How do we get the message out? So from conception, it was just breaking down, okay, this is what we have to do. This is where we need to be by this month, by this time. So it was a lot of just, what do we do first? And the first thing that we did was make a 1-page. So basically just describing what media literacy was and what Media Decoded is, the project itself. And from there, that's kind of when it just blossomed into so much to where now we're sitting here talking about it. And that's honestly the conception of it. That's the birth of Media Decoded, but it really just started with Tara telling us, well, hey, I want to do this, and I want, you guys to help me. And we were like, okay,
yeah,
whatever you tell us, let's do it. And it's been our lives now for a couple months.
I think she started with, it was like a little pocket guide
Yeah.
for your wallet. I even have mine in my wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, this is cute. We could do something
We're like,
with
these
this.
are fun colors.
And then, we were making a 1-page, and I was like, oh, there's a lot we need to learn here.
She actually, I remember that because we actually had the pocket guide, and she was like, here, this is what I've started with. And we're like, oh, this is really cute colors. We love this. She's like, oh, well, give me little edits. And we're like, okay. And so we had it's on the website if you go to the website. But I got a piece of binder paper, and we literally tore into her pocket guide and edited everything about it. I was like, I actually don't like this color. We're going to change it.
She drew the little head.
Yeah, so if you go onto our website, it's on Fierce Mustang Media. It's a little drop down on our work. And you can literally see the piece of binder paper, and that's where it started.
Mm-hmm.
Like on a scratch piece of binder paper, her and I in a room alone going, well, I don't like how the head is shaped. I don't like how this is shaped. What are we going to say on this and this and this? What does exam mean? What does interpret mean? So it literally just started with us being like, oh, this, and this. And then she was like, all right, this is assigned to you now. And we were like, oh. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the conception of it.
That's wonderful, and I love that. Like, it seemed like it was a process that was like, oh, this seems really cool, and it's like, oh, what did I get myself into?
Pretty much.
Literally, she is a fisher.
And like even now, just today, like as we're recording this right now, we've come up with a whole way of wanting to make it into something we can put in our newspaper. Not to plug our own thing, but we're looking into putting it into a 4-page pull-out section in our paper, just to promote it more to other people, because we know people pick up the paper and we know people look at it all the time too. So we were like, well, why haven't we even done this yet? Why didn't we even think about this yet? So we were actually just talking about more ways to get it out.
Yeah, you won't be here next semester.
I won't be here for that, but
I was saying I most likely would have to be here next semester, so I'm going to be working on that. I think that's going to be fun, and it's some more content we can add to the website as well, and preparing for CCMA as well. So I'm excited for that. It's going to be fun. I still can hit her up if I need.
Definitely this will be a project that I'm sure Jalissa will text me and be like, hey, I need you to interview you for this or that for it. And I'll be like, all right, let's go.
And be like, get serious.
Yeah.
Don't laugh.
Yeah.
Just real stuff.
Lock in.
Yeah.
Do a little breath work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads into my question of, what is media literacy and why is it important in today's age?
Let me give you the proper definition. I'll start with that, and she can tell you why it's important. Media literacy's proper definition is the ability or skills to critically analyze for accuracy, credibility, or evidence of bias content created and consumed in various media. So, media, considering it to be radio, television, the internet, social media, that's what you're looking for. You want to have the skills to be able to find all of that.
And like I was saying earlier about just how, people can easily fall victim to what they're consuming, especially on social media. I think social media is a bigger target for those types of people because everyone uses social media. Everyone consumes it every day. So I just feel like social media, it's it's tricky because, like I said, people don't want to analyze or kind of think about what they're consuming because that might fall into their beliefs, But I feel like media literacy, it's important to ask these questions and like, is this real? Is this really happening? Is this happening down the street from where I live? I mean, even outside of the world, like, oh, is this really going on in America? We have to ask those questions. And even with some news outlets too, most of them nowadays are just becoming more and more aggressively biased, information. So it's very important to dissect all.
So let's go over the media literacy toolkit. It goes over a four-step process of examine, question, interpret, and explain. Tell me more about the process of following each step.
I'll do the first two for you. So you have examine, right? So that's when you're presented with something. To use an example of, I guess, something modern, let's talk about the dire wolves because that was a thing for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. So when I see that, right, my first step for me is I'm like, okay, like, where is this coming from? So let's say I saw it on People magazine, right? Okay, well, I need to find the about page. What is People about? Like, where did it start? Who's involved in it? Who are the people themselves? What do they follow? So you want to like just kind of look about the source and just kind of check that stuff, but be open-minded because you have to really be cautious about what they're saying, right? So you don't want to trust everything that they're telling you and everything that you're seeing, but it's always good to like check their about page because it could be something fake, right? And then it's kind of your second step, like, well, who are they trying to speak to? Okay, dire wolves, that's definitely speaking to your Game of Thrones, your extinction of a species. So you're targeting a specific kind of audience to get their attention to read about this topic, right? So that's what you want to ask yourself. Like, who's this targeting? Is it targeting me or is it supposed to be targeting my neighbor? Like, that's what you want to examine when you're examining again to research what that specific media is. Does that make sense?
No, to top off that, I think also, not all the time, but I think also some people, when they are putting that content out, a lot of other people are like, oh, well, this topic is being talked about, and then it becomes widespread like wildfire, and then everyone's talking about it. And then, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but there has been some instances where it's like, oh, that's not even true, and everyone's just feeding off of it and going off of what was said. So I think you broke that down really well.
Examining and question is really just making sure that the content, is it unbiased? Who's it coming from? Who is it directed at? That's like your top 3 things to focus on. And then, that's when you go into the other part of the process,
which is like interpreting. So, and when we interpret the media, we have to ask the question, well, what do you gain from this message? How is it being delivered in the news as well? You have to look at the news outlets as well and see what they're saying about it. Is it being talked about? Is it informative? Is it giving the right information? And then also the other question, who's narrating and who is telling this message? Like Andrea was saying earlier about like, who is People? Who created this media? What is their whole bias and their whole bio when they are passing out the information. And also you have to ask yourself, am I missing something? Is there something that I passed up? Is there something that could be explained more that I'm just not understanding? And that's what the interpreting process, and then that falls into with explaining what is the point of the message? Why is the message necessary? Why do I need to learn about dire wolves? But I think like Andrea was saying, talking about evolution and all the scientific facts about it and how it could affect the environment, I think that's also important too. And just, can you learn from the process? And I think that's also important too. When you are learning when you're going through all these steps and you've learned the whole process of it, I think that's important, especially if you make it a habit when you do consume media. And I'm not saying do it every time, but I would say if you are consuming a media you're not familiar with, absolutely do all those steps to figure out what's their story, what's going on here, who are these people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like being media literate, going through this process is just about knowing that the messages that are coming to you, the clickbaits, the deepfakes, the biased, unbiased information, the scams, is knowing that you're going to be able to critically think and do it yourself of finding out if something is true, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much the whole point of the project, whole point of the 4-step process is knowing that you're critically thinking and doing that extra work to find out, hey, this TikTok is actually, something that's not true. Like, it's AI, right? That's a big thing nowadays is AI. So going that extra mile to check, well, hey, this is something that AI produced. That's all about being media literate.
I also want to top off that a lot of these, a lot of social media and everything, I feel like, when you watch advertisements, it always targets, certain audiences, right? And I think children and the elderly, it's easier to target them because they're more vulnerable and they're easier to convince. They're more, oh goodness, I can't even think of the word right now. There's a proper word to say it, but you can influence them easier, so to speak.
Yeah, you can definitely, if you ever wanted to practice this type of thing of being media literate, it's definitely something that you can easily do with advertisements at home, watching something, right? You can easily tell when an advertisement is targeted at, say, your grandparent or targeted specifically at your younger brother or sister. That's super easy for you to understand, right? So for people to just practice these 4 steps, just look at an advertisement for Cheerios, that's targeting everybody. It's actually specifically targeting older people, right? Because it's supposed to be heart healthy. So when you're doing your 4-step process, just the key thing, if you wanted to practice being media literate, just start with advertisements. You don't have to do it on your phone, even though you should be doing it, when you're scrolling, doom scrolling and all of that. But, just easily practicing to do advertisements.
Ooh, I love that. I love that.
Thank you. And thank you so much for providing information on how to have this information or to how to apply this information realistically and just to go about it.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop.
Wait.
Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
We're here early before they wake up. We stay late, we stay informed, we invest in the latest technology.
We take the time to train the next generation of doctors and nurses. We work together to make sure we heal their bodies and their minds.
We do this not because it's our job, but because this is about our veterans' lives. This is our mission. More than 300,000 of us working as one, together with families and loved ones. No matter where they live in this country, we'll be there.
We all come together and stand together to serve our veterans. We stand strong, united. Stand with us in caring for our veterans.
I'm going to shift the conversation dynamics just a little bit, more so into the things that affect us as Stocktonians. For years since 2019, Wallet Hub has consistently ranked Stockton and Modesto as two of the bottom 7 cities of the least educated cities in America out of the top 150 highest populated metropolitan cities. A 2020 Brandeis University study reported that Stockton, California was ranked 4th worst place to raise a child, and a 2006 article written by Stockton's own The Record stated that Stockton ranked dead last in literacy levels amongst the largest 70 cities in America. That leads into my next question of what might the role of journalism and media play in shifting dynamics of perception of what doesn't get covered in Stockton?
I think that's a great question because I feel like I have this conversation with a lot of profit organizations. I think that because Stockton has a stigmatism of that it's the worst place to live and it's dangerous and it's been like that for the longest time, but maybe in the early 2000s that's when Stockton got its bad rep. But I think that we're too focused on the bad than the good. And there are a lot of people that are trying to make Stockton a better place. But, those people don't get that elevation when it comes to what is happening in Stockton. We think about, someone got shot, on the street in broad daylight. A child was in the back seat of a car and got shot. And those things should be talked about, but we shouldn't glorify those things. And then as for the other question about why Stockton's media literacy is so low, I think it's just with social media. It's like Facebook, for example. I think there's so many groups that have a lot of biased, opinions, and people follow that. And I think people, like I said, people just follow where the piper goes, But yeah, I think we need to focus more on the good as well instead of just the bad.
I believe it's just something people, they just want to believe something too, like she was saying. With a lot of certain groups you have, they just want to take the first part of it and they don't want to investigate themselves because the answers should just be given to you, which I agree with. You should just have journalists giving you the answers, or publications, they should just have the answers, but we don't always have those. So a lot of the time I think people just take what they read first and just go with it, because sometimes it's, and I'm fall victim to this, because sometimes it's just easier to believe something than actually do the work and find it, because it's either a happier outcome than what it truly is, and so you just want to believe the best of things. So I think that's a lot of it too, is people just want to believe the best in things, even though something could be like really bad if you go into it more. That makes sense.
No, yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Everyone wants to believe in something.
Moving on to the next question. With the rise and threat of this technology that, in my opinion, has sort of left a stain on the way that we view journalism in this city, how does this rapid shift of social media play in the roles in which that you guys produce and go about journalism?
It's a big part.
Yeah.
Social media is a huge part of journalism now. No longer is it pen to paper. It's now voice to the audience, strictly live. You have TikTok where you can go live. You have Instagram where you can go live. You have, even though nobody wants to admit it, Facebook is still around, and you have Facebook Live. It plays such a huge part that, just for example, getting a degree as a journalist right now, it's not just about can I write, it's about can I create a multimedia package, meaning can I create the video, can I create the audio, can I create the podcast, can I create something around the story that I'm trying to report on. And honestly, you have to adapt to it. You have, in this field, you have to be able to adapt to something that drops on the dime, truly. And having social media, I feel like, reaches a greater audience. I feel like it can reach so many more people than just a newspaper can, like a print newspaper, which is unfortunate because I really love the art of print newspapers. But I think that social media, it also allows readers to express their opinions or ask the questions. If we're not asking the right ones, if we're not covering the right things, it allows them to be like, hey, this and this, such and such. And I think that's a kind of beautiful part of social media.
Yeah. For me, I think the social media has its pros and cons, of course. But I think social media is a great tool. And it is, I mean, it's an evolving tool, and I think it's going to progress as, generations to come. But I think, as like Andrea was saying, being a journalist trying to get your degree, you have to know all these other things with technology. And sometimes, like, I had to take a couple courses about that, and that was a little challenging because I'm like, oh, well, I don't know anything about like how to change the dial or getting the audio right. But I mean, you do have to appreciate all the challenges for that, because you do learn a skill. But I do have to agree with Andrea with like social media. It's, it's easier to report through there than, getting the newspaper out, or, man, there's some people that don't even know how to open up a newspaper, which kind of makes me laugh, but it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Sometimes I think some cons, though, because we always want to tell both sides, right? We're journalists. We always want to tell every side we possibly can. So the cons to social media, at least for us, and this is strictly my opinion, is getting that following. As much as we know how to content create, we know how to do all of that stuff, it's still a hard job to promote yourself. Earlier we were talking about accomplishments that we've done. I don't talk about things like that. I'm not great at promoting myself because I just like to stay behind the camera, so to speak, or stay behind the paper, so to speak, and just give you the facts, the truth, and all of that. And so for me, it's very difficult to be like, hey, follow my Instagram for more news updates, or follow me for such and such. Like, that for me is really hard. And then I know that for a lot of people, the difficult part of social media is reading the comments, right? Because you're always going to have somebody's opinion. You're always going to have somebody that disagrees with an article that you write, even if it's like straight news, straight facts. You reported everything correctly. You got everything out there. You're always going to have somebody that disagrees with you. And so, at least for journalists, you have to be able to create that thicker skin and realize, well, everybody's going to have an opinion. And they're not going to agree with me, but I know that I gave you everything that there is. That if you went out yourself, you requested all of this information, you public requested all this information, which anybody can do, that you're going to find the same thing I did. And if you don't, maybe you'll be able to share that with me so that we can collaborate on that and give the community the information they need to make a decision. So I think that's like a big con to it, but it's also a big pro because you're creating that thicker skin.
I think one thing I will say and add on top of that, with Andrea mentioning leaving it up to the audience to figure out what the truth is. I think that is also, that's the point of journalism. let those people have that opinion on what it is. As long as you stated all the facts and laid it all out there, that's up to the audience to what they depict with that story. And that's what we do. We leave it up to the audience.
There's a sort of detachment to having, it's like you're not trying to influence people on how to think.
Right.
It's just more so, this is the truth. You get to choose whatever you want to believe.
True journalists are never going to influence you on their own bias and their own opinions. We are never going to do that. Those are your true journalists. And you can tell by just doing your media literacy, by examining everything, checking where the sources came from, and checking that, hey, they did all of their work. They did, they crossed the X's and O's off, and now I can form my opinion. Because that's all we want, is we want you to be able to make a valid decision in your daily life about something. Such as, like, if there's a political, what's it called?
Protest?
No.
No? Oh.
If there's an election, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If there's, such as if there's an election going on, we want you to have all the information. Like in Jalissa's Measure K story, she did so much digging to make sure that everyone that read her pieces or had a question, they would be easily able to find the information on it, or it was sitting right there in front of them. And so they could make a valid decision on whether or not they wanted to vote for Measure K or not.
As humans, we ask ourselves all kinds of questions. But what if we were forced to ask ourselves a question every day that affected the outcome of the most basic things, the most important things in our lives? The question is, what is your sexual orientation or gender identity? And the answer is the difference between keeping your job or getting fired. The answer is the difference between staying in your home or getting evicted. The answer is the difference between receiving medical treatment or not. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against people based on their answer to this question. LGBT Americans have the right to say I do, but they don't have the same basic rights as everyone else. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Suicide is the leading cause of death amongst young adults. Friends can play a crucial role in suicide prevention, since 76% of young adults turn to a friend in a time of crisis. This generation is ready to crack open a conversation about mental health, but they're missing the language to do it. Seize the Awkward aims to encourage and empower young adults to reach out to a friend who may be struggling with mental health. SeizeTheAwkward.org provides resources such as tutorial videos, information on warning signs, conversation starters, and tips on how to sustain a conversation around mental health. To learn more, visit SeizeTheAwkward.org, public service announcement brought to you by the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention and the Ad Council.
I think this perfectly ties into my last and final question, which is almost in a similar vein, which is out of all the efforts that you guys bleed and pour your blood, sweat, and tears in crafting these stories, what is the one thing that you want your audience to be left with?
The truth and the knowledge of that story. For me, everyone has a story. Everything has a story. And I want to elevate the situation or that person's experience or people's experience. But like I was saying, like, it really, the audience has to make that choice of what it is, what they think it is, what it could be. We can't, I don't want to say that we lead everyone hand in hand to, but we're leading them to make their own decision at the end of the day.
I think for me it depends. And I say that because I think it depends on what I'm writing. And to quickly list out, if I'm writing a news story, I want the audience to be left with a couple of questions themselves. I want them to be able to either talk to me about it or be able to go and answer those questions. And I've given those resources for them to go and ask those questions. Say, like, if I reported on a city council meeting I have an internship right now going on, freelancing thing. So if I had gone to a city council meeting for Stockton and I wrote about it for Stocktonia and I came away and they had a couple questions left, I want them to be able to go to the next city council meeting and be like, hey, this was reported at your last city council meeting. Here's some questions that I have out. Can you answer those? So I think for news stories, sometimes I do want them to come back with questions and stuff. With opinion stories that I write, it's my own opinion. A lot of the time, if you're reading an opinion story that somebody wrote, it's their own opinion with some factual evidence to back it up. But I do want them to actually engage with my opinion. I want to have a healthy discussion about why something is the way something is. Why, burning out that's a recent story I just wrote. Why burning out sucks, right? Like at your daily job, that really sucks. But here are some things that help me assist with burnout. So what are some things you use to assist with burnout? Sorry. I think for feature pieces, what I always want people to take away from that is that they read a story, right? Like they read a story about either a certain club we were highlighting, a certain person we were highlighting. They were able to read their story and come away with like a sense of, wow, that person really worked hard, or wow, that person is really amazing. I really want to be able to highlight somebody's story that way when I'm writing a feature. I want you to feel like you're in that story and you're talking to that person or you're experiencing that with that person. And then I think just with a sports story, which is my personal favorite, that depending on what you're doing, right, because there's different levels to sports stories, I always want somebody to come out with, okay, the game did this, 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 and this. Romo did this. Cool. He's good. I win my bet, blah, blah, blah. Like, stuff like that. That's kind of like what I always want people to take away. But to agree with Jalissa, that I just, in all honesty, with every story, I hope people come out of it feeling like they have the truth and that they can trust me to always report the truth. And I hope that continues on.
Yeah, no, that I do appreciate you breaking that down, because I feel like I just threw a bunch of words together.
No, I think it just truly depends on what you're writing. And every journalist writes something different.
Yes.
And everybody has their opinions, and you just have to watch out for that. Like which ones are their opinion stories? Which ones are they trying to tell you the truth? No matter what, we're always backing up, everyone's going to back up their opinion with something. And so it's just checking your sources.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have your editor. Your editor is always going to look through your story, and they are brutally honest. They're supposed to be. That's their job. So if they're like, hey, this little part right here sounds like an opinion, might need to switch that up or change, or put why, link what you're trying to say. And without our editors, man, it would be a mess. It would be a mess.
I guess you could add this part. You probably could cut this to the beginning, but I mean, that's our job as editors, right? Like we are the last line of defense to make sure everyone's story has been checked. Facts, evidence, quotes. That is our job. We are supposed to be the last defense before we publish anything. And that's gone through the writer. It's gone through the managing editor. That's gone through the feature or sports or news editor, and then it comes to us, and then we are supposed to be the last defense to make sure that we've gotten all the facts straight. Of course, there's always going to be mistakes, and we always try to correct the mistakes in the next issue or online, but we're supposed to be that last defense. So our main goal is just to make sure that you come away with the truth, the facts, the evidence, to form your own opinion.
As editors, we guide our journalists, and the journalist guides the audience. But yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much for you guys, for your guys' time. I really loved all of your answers. And just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you for having us. This has been a great experience, and we're glad that we can really talk about what we're trying to, promote and get out there. So thank you.
Check out Media Decoded at
Please.
fiercemustangmedia.com under our work. Hashtag we love media literacy.
Yes.
This has been my interview with Jalissa King and Andrea Rivera, wrapping up today's episode of Dissemination of Misinformation. Dissemination of Misinformation is a production of KWDC 93.5 LPFM Delta College Radio, hosted by the digital media students at San Joaquin Delta College. Programming is made possible by listeners like you, the Department of Arts and Multimedia, and the Department of Workforce Development. Thank you for listening.